to the final round of the competition of the Nebraska Farm Bureau Young Farmers and Ranchers Discussion Meeting. I am David Schuler of the Nebraska Young Farmers and Ranchers Committee from the town of Bridgeport. I'll be serving as the root chair for this round. At this time, out of respect for our competitors, please turn off your cell phones and all electronic devices. Also, please keep distraction as minimal as possible to allow for full concentration by the competitors. In the event of continual distractions, it may be necessary in the room chair to ask you to leave. At this time, we would like to invite anyone who will be taking photographs during the competition to sit in the reserved front row. Serving as moderator for this round is Desiree Porter from Bedford. Serving as timer for this round is Rebecca Wolf from Hubbard. The final rounds allow competitors to be evaluated on their discussion of one of the 5 topics brought forth by the American Farm Bureau Federation. Competitors' rankings from rounds 1 and 2 today will be used to determine our winner, the competitor in the American Farm Bureau discussion meeting. The question for this round is, due to current economic demands, many farmers and ranchers spend a lot of time outside the fence rows on off-farm jobs. How can Farm Bureau become more accessible and welcoming to members who are working in related fields and juggling responsibilities on and off the farm? The judges, timer, and competitors have been briefed as to the rules of the competition. At this time, I yield control of this competition to your moderator, Desiree.
Thank you, David. We appreciate all of you for taking the time to attend this competition. Your support is appreciated by the competitors. Competitors, please come take your places up front. Writing is allowed after the competitors have been seated. As your room chair has mentioned, the competitors have been briefed on competition and realize that is their general discussion should be directed towards each other rather than the audience. In my role as moderator, I will not attempt to control or direct this discussion. Remember, the discussion is meant to simulate a committee meeting, not a panel discussion with a point, counterpoint, and an active moderator. As such, I will not intervene unless or until disparaging or inappropriate remarks are made. With that in mind, the burden is on competitors to moderate themselves and conduct in a cooperative and congenial manner. The competitors for this round are Joe Melnick, Lydia Vinton, Amy Musgrave, and Clay Patton. We will begin this discussion with 30-second opening statements from each competitor. Following the opening statements, there will be 25 minutes of open discussion, followed by a one minute of quiet time for the competitors to compile their 1-minute closing statement. Official time is kept by the timekeeper. Competitors, in voluntary order, make your 30-second opening statements. Please stand and direct your statements to the audience. The timer will indicate when your 30 seconds have elapsed by holding up a red card. You may begin.
The likelihood of you ever owning your own farm or ranch is slim to none. My suggestion, get a good job and maybe have a hobby farm. Verbatim what my grandfather told me on the day of my high school graduation. USDA data would back up his statements. In 2019, 96% of all farms attributed income or special needs to off-farm jobs. Through Nebraska Farm Bureau, though, we need a voice in agriculture. That's why we need to continue expanding to make sure we have agribusiness people helping to tell our story.
According to the USDA, in 2017, 56% of farm ranchers' primary income came from off-farm jobs. That number increases to 66% when it comes to young farmers and ranchers. We, as a grassroots organization, need to be welcome to the people working in these fields, whether it be simply sharing our story or talking about opportunities that Farm Bureau offers, such as Leadership Academy or the Young Farmers and Ranchers program.
Clay and Joe both took the statistics I was going to say, but I am one of those 56% that has a job outside of the farm. However, I still choose to be involved in Nebraska Farm Bureau. Why is this? Because I recognize the importance that Nebraska Farm Bureau brings to our producers. I still consider myself a producer, but unfortunately at this point I can't be on the farm full time. So I am still involved in any way I can. Thank you.
I've never been part of an operation that someone hasn't had an off-farm job. Growing up, my dad was a practicing veterinarian and he managed a cow-calf operation. On our operation, our off-farm jobs have had to support the livestock report. And motivation unique to us, as my fellow competitors have said. But this means that there's a great opportunity for Nebraska Farm Bureau to do things like advocate for rural development and non-traditional ag production to become more accessible and welcoming to off-farm farmers.
You have heard the opening statements. The competitors may now proceed with this discussion. Competitors, please direct your discussion towards your fellow panel members.
I'm excited for this. I think this is going to be a great round of conversation. And as Lydia pointed out, I'm so thankful that Nebraska Farm Bureau has already opened up to this idea of agribusiness, because it's the only reason that I have the opportunity to sit here. With that, though, to a certain extent, agribusiness and agribusiness people are somewhat limited when it comes to the state board. We don't have any agribusiness state board members or members at large or anything like that. Do we need to consider that? We need to relook at the ratios of where that line is and coming out to and maybe having them play a larger role in leadership.
Clay, that's a great point. I agree that we do need to have that representation from the ag business world or just the outside, the off-farm world on our board. I know a couple of years ago, and it's continuing on, that we're having the bylaws being looked at by the younger generation coming up trying to get this pushed through. But I think this is something that, of course, that's, the state board is the end goal for everyone, I think, at some point. But this is something that we definitely need to start bringing in the next generation of young farmers and ranchers, Leadership Academy. Just getting those people involved, I think, is what's going to be more important to building into getting that bylaw passed and getting that seat at the table.
I definitely agree with both of you, Joe and Clay, and that's something that our voting delegates will be discussing and voting on tomorrow, as well as potentially adding an ag business member to our board. And I think the key thing there is, there's a little kind of subtext that says they need to be, actively invested in agriculture, or have some sort of vested interest in it. And I think most of us can agree that we see the value in ag businesses, and we see that their investment in Farm Bureau can be very, very helpful. But some of our outside members might not. So just being able to show, how much of an impact ag business has on producers and vice versa, and why they need to be involved in Farm Bureau is really going to get us that seat at the table, like Joe said.
I think, it's kind of intimidating. We're talking about new members and bringing people that are off the farm, It's intimidating to come to a state conference or even a YF&R conference where there's 175 people, and you see most of these people who know most of the people because it's people that have been in there. I know, for me personally, 4 years ago now, my first ever Farm Bureau thing was in Columbus. I was that person. I didn't know anyone. My wife and I just moved to the area. We didn't know anyone. But I went to that YF&R conference and I was hooked, Then I got to know my RM. Well, from there, now I'm on the county board. And then from there, I went and got to Leadership Academy. From there, on the YF&R board. It just grows on you. And as soon as you can get your foot into the door, it really just starts expanding. And I think that's where we struggle, is getting those people to those events.
I agree with you, Joe. And I'd like to ask Amy, bring it back to her opening statement about advocating for Farm Bureau. I'm curious, Amy, did you have any events in mind that might help us open the door a little bit more, like Joe said?
So one of the things that I've heard quite a few people say about Farm Bureau and working off farm jobs is that they don't understand how an organization that is for farmers 100% can be for someone who isn't 100% a farmer. And maybe that goes back to inviting them to things like YF&R or your county meeting or the state annual meeting. But showing them that yes, we do have your interests as an off-farm farmer at heart. So whether that's advocating for rural development, things like schools, advocating for better schools, better roads, better infrastructure, things that matter to even off-farm farmers.
Amy, I want to build on that idea that you bring up there, because I think too that's where Farm Bureau has now kind of curtailed it to where we're streamlining ourselves for agribusiness as well, where we've condensed our state meeting that we're at right now. We've got 1 day of professional development, we have 1 day of policy and business, I mean, that works in a situation where you're trying to balance, PTO time or something with a possible agribusiness, or you can't step away from clients too long, maybe an ag sales role or something. So the fact that we've already streamlined that, continuing to push down that direction, but in that same instance, we need to continue in keeping rural development key in mind how that helps. But I think that's what helped us in Dawson County is the fact that we've opened up to ag business and letting them come in and voice those type of concerns has really seemed to help us.
Yeah, and in Adams-Webster County, most of our people are ag business people. And what we've really done and what we've really pushed for is being a younger board kind of makes it a little bit easier, is we have started really pushing the YF&R rural events. And that really helps to target those people that come to those events because they're there to get involved. They're there to enjoy the evening, but they're also there to get involved. And so I think that's a really good time to target that audience.
I definitely agree, and I think the YF&R, like getting them young, getting them hooked in the organization to keep them coming, like all of us right now, is key. And one thing I think that has been great that Farm Bureau has been doing is the Excellence in Ag Award. So that's for non-traditional agriculturalists, not your producers, but people who are invested in agriculture. So really kind of showcasing them and highlighting them. I think continuing to highlight and have awards like that can definitely help us put on a more welcoming face for those agriculturalists.
That is a great point, Lydia. My husband and I actually got the chance to represent Nebraska in 2018 for the Excellence in Ag Award. And it was absolutely eye-opening to see all the different types of people who were involved in all the different types of agriculture around the nation. You had sheep farmers on a mountain in Utah, a ski resort in Utah. You had a guy in Oklahoma who was in the works of taking over his family's operation, but worked for a private research company on the side. You got the chance to see, here are so many ways that you can be both involved in agriculture and agribusiness, and tie those two together. And that's a really great point, Leah. But I have a question for you. You mentioned earlier that you and your fiance are eventually going to be taking over your family's operation. And I think that's wonderful, but one of the things that we've noticed with people who do that is that they run into the issue of health insurance.
Yes, definitely a big issue. And don't say that too loudly because I don't know if my dad's ready to give up the reins and say that we're taking over, but we're moving back to hopefully be a part of it. And right now I'm lucky enough to have a quote-unquote town job to provide us insurance, which gives a lot of value to our operation. And I think anyone who has a spouse who provides them insurance or benefits in some way, that can't be discounted. That's something that's giving you value, that's helping you save in other aspects. So if I ever decide to move home to the ranch full-time and quit teaching, that's definitely a hurdle we'll have to jump through.
Lydia, it's interesting you bring up the fact health insurance, but I think that's one thing that we could promote through the Farm Bureau as well, though, the fact that we've made strides in ensuring that that's a possibility, that you can actually access health care coverage and health insurance through Farm Bureau. So maybe we include that at our YF&R and some of these rural meetings, work with our regional managers to get more of that information in. So if you're at that tipping point of, okay, do I stick with the town job, and it's where I have benefits, but really my passion or where I'd like to spend my time is an off-farm. So Farm Bureau's already created that type of environment. The one thing that I kind of catch myself on a little bit is we need to be open. We want agribusiness, they have the time, they have the ability, but how do we keep our grassroots organization, making sure that we're staying true to agriculture and we're not serving corporate interests? That's one thing I would like to see as a safeguard, whether we put it in our policy or in our bylaws, that we safeguard against maybe corporate ag interests versus more family farm interests like we currently do.
I think that's fairly easy. It's just how you sell that opportunity. You're one seat at the table compared to 7. So I think that's just more about how we present that to the board, not being like, hey, we just want our voice to be heard. This is me, one person representing the town jobs or whatnot. Amy, real quick, I kind of want to go back to excellence in ag because there's an idea that was, I thought of earlier and we talked about with our Young Farmers and Ranchers group is instead of having, you're always going to have that one excellence in ag award, But why can we not present that out to our regions and say, hey, let's have a regional excellence in ag. Let's have a regional discussion meet. Let's have these regional awards. And then when it comes to that state competition, well, now we've got 7 people who have, quote unquote, won their region. Now you've got 7 people competing instead of just 1 or 2 like we have in the past.
I think that would be an excellent idea. One of the other things that we ran into when we were meeting people from all over the nation that were also in Excellence in Ag was that there were states that actively selected people and then worked to help them build their resume. So when they made it to nationals, their resume was really competitive. They looked really impressive on paper. They gave excellent presentations. And so, doing something like you said, starting at that regional level and then moving on and refining and being able to present people who are more competitive even at the national level, I think that's an excellent idea. I think that's a great way to also get more people involved. As both you and Lydia were saying, if you can get people started in these regional events, these smaller events that are perhaps a bit less intimidating.
And I think that's something, Joe, that we could even hopefully implement at the county level eventually. I mean, think about all of our county members who are members but don't come to stuff, and that's something we struggle with. So I'm trying to hand pick those people, try to get them to apply, talk to them at the county level, then move on to regional, then to state, can even get more involvement and more awareness about that award as well.
Bring it back to the grassroots level of it, of showcasing it, and it's something that the county banquet, again, if you had something of a local similar Ag and Excellence Award. Do we also then kind of widen our scope as we talk about the benefits that somebody in agribusiness can, whether it be rural housing, rural development, rural child care, do we start kind of working with our local chambers of commerce? Is there somebody else in the rural community that maybe is more centered into what we might quote unquote call an urban job, a financial planner, an attorney, and we try to somehow involve them in that situation? It helps to expand our members, gives us maybe a different voice at the board. Somebody's going to bring some outside ideas, but in that same sense, it's incorporating more that support rural America, rural lifestyle versus just ag.
I like the idea of bringing someone from the outside in. That's always beneficial. It's always beneficial to be able to see it from the other side. But that's where our insurance agents can really come in and play a huge part in what we do. I know our insurance agent, he helps us with hey, this member they either haven't paid their dues or they're struggling with this, because who doesn't go in and blow off steam to their insurance agent? You had a flat tire that morning. Your insurance agent knows about it because you're the first person, that's the first person you talk to. Your RMs don't know it, your county board doesn't know it. But that insurance person, when we have our county board meetings, he sits in there and he's like, hey, so-and-so is having this event. Have you guys thought about attending? Or so-and-so is doing this. Do you want to invite them to do this? So really flexing and using those insurance agents is also a really good tool that we can use as Farm Bureau members.
That's an excellent idea. I know in our region at least, our insurance agents are the main drivers of our membership. And so, just because they have such a wider reach, such a wider audience, I think that's an excellent idea, Joe, for how we can get more people and more eyes and more ears on events that we're having.
So Amy and Joe, I kind of redirect you this question because I'll say on the flip side of that, our agents are not as active in gearing that membership and pushing that membership drive. So how did you start that conversation with them, or is this something that's kind of, as they've been a member or part of it for long enough that they know to push it there?
Well, so for us, we just started inviting them to board meetings. It wasn't as open of conversation as it is now. It was, hey, you want to come to a board meeting? And then eventually we redid our bylaws for our county, and now he's got a seat on the board. He's a person that can actually vote on the board. But that also, one, it gives him a seat at the table, and two, making his customers happy is what makes him happy. Because you always, happy customers always repeat. And if he can be that voice, like I said, if he can be that voice, we're more than welcome to have him sit at the table.
So Clay, I'm in a similar situation as you were. I don't feel like we hear as much from our insurance agent. So Joe, kind of, if I can summarize, and what I'm hearing is to start small and just start with a conversation with him, invite him to a meeting, and work with that person. I think, especially in my area, I know people would be cautious about changes that are going to affect their members, especially the producers, because like Clay said earlier, we cannot forget about the producers. They are what drives this organization, but we do need to grow with the time. So I think those baby steps is where my county would need to start.
Yeah, and I think you would be surprised at how soon once the people know that the insurance agent can soften the blow to the county board, I think you'd be surprised at how quick that really starts coming along.
Lydia, I really liked your idea of baby steps and starting that conversation, just starting it small, just an invite, reaching a hand out, and I really like that idea because to me it goes back to when I was doing research for this, the ERS said that it's producers under the age of 35 that are most likely to have off-farm jobs, that have the highest proportion of their income, household income, come from off-farm jobs. Which means that as producers age, they shift their income streams to more production streams rather than off-farm streams. And so, while this is an issue that obviously affects us right now as younger people, is this something that how do we get people who have moved past this position to really care about it? Because we've run into that issue before, where it's like, well, yes, this isn't an issue to you, but it is to me, so we need to do something about it, otherwise you're not going to have people who are going to come back, who are going to want to be involved.
Yeah, Amy, I definitely see where you're coming from, and that's an interesting statistic for sure. I think we cannot underestimate the power of like a one-on-one conversation. I do not like cold calls, but I think they could be very beneficial if we are like truly trying to lobby to change something in our county, to get somebody on our county board, on our regional membership, however we are trying to change something. I think just going around and talking to people could be very beneficial there.
One of the things I wanted to kind of hit on is, part of the question was welcoming people. It seems like farm and ranch people are always nice people, and they're always welcoming. And yeah, that's exactly what it seems like up front. But again, to get into that inner circle, how do you get there? And the baby steps is one thing I want to revert back to, because that's one of the things that I did. And as I thought about this question, one of the things I thought about was my son and my kid on the way. What is the opportunity that Farm Bureau can present to them in the future? And me, just like I said, being very inexperienced in Farm Bureau, and 3 years down the road, this is where I'm at. It just makes it so we can talk about things like Leadership Academy and YF&R and just all the programs that there is to offer. Makes it so easy to welcome someone into that program.
Joe, I'm super glad you brought that up. That just triggered the thought on my mind. I was talking out here at our trade show to Treadsure, our Innovative Ag Challenge, one that's going to represent us at the national level. And he posed the question. He said, what is in it for you for Farm Bureau? And going through the fact that they represent everybody from the small guy to the big guy. Maybe we kind of open it up with those baby steps, or that initial discussion of, hey, you live in rural America, maybe you have thoughts, you grew up on a farm or ranch, get to know that personal step and say, we're not just for the 1,000-acre farmer, but we're for the 10-acre farmer that maybe has honeybees or is just trying something different. There's something for everybody.
Yes, and Clay, I think a great way to maybe implement that is we can't forget about our collegiate farm bureau. That's how I got involved in Farm Bureau. I know my parents have been members for forever, but it just wasn't really something that was on my radar until one of my friends drove me to a meeting, and here I am now. College is the time to try new things. So helping out our Collegiate Farm Bureau members, our leadership that is in Collegiate Farm Bureau, Audrey, I know, does a lot with that. If we can really ramp that up, I think getting in on that level could really help us, 5, 10, 12, 15 years down the road, remember retention.
That's an excellent point, Lydia and Clay, that Farm Bureau does have sort of niches for everyone, really. Like from the people who have honeybees to the collegiate members who are trying to decide what path they want their careers to take. Farm Bureau it represents all of us. It's not just, the farmers who grow corn, the farmers who grow soybeans. It is, the livestock guys, it is the row crop guys, it is the sugar beet guys out in western Nebraska. And I think that's one of the really strong points that Farm Bureau has, is that they represent all types of agriculture in Nebraska, and that presents an opportunity, I feel like, for us to be able to reach out and start those baby steps.
And one of the,
Real quick, I love that question. What's in it for me? I get to ask that all the time. You know, and that's, when people ask me that question, I say, well, who bought the lowest selling sheep at your fair? Who gave scholarships to the students that didn't have scholarships? You know, who is the one that bought the pancakes for the pancake feed? Who's the one that did all that stuff? Farm Bureau did that stuff. And that's, you know, that's just showing what's in it for me. It might not be necessarily for you, but your community. And doing those things really opens the eyes of the community, because the lowest selling sheep or steer, whatever, doesn't get advertised in the paper. But that family knows about Farm Bureau now, and that's just another way we help get people in the door.
from a membership perspective too, I think about our time constraints. Joe, you talk about having a baby and one on the way, those sort of situations. That is where involving outside or agribusiness, business type people in our organization as well, we can help relieve some of the time constraints of making every meeting, making it to all the policy meetings. In that situation, maybe we're looking a little bit the wrong demographic. We have the retirees, the ones that are kind of coming out. Maybe they have a lot more time, part-time job. They could be an advocate for agriculture. We can educate them, we can bring them in. So go back to Lydia, we start with those baby steps, and maybe we look at the upper end as well, inviting in, the recent high school principal that retired and having him come in and sit down.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Us as younger people trying to get our foot in the door, always trying to see it from our angle of the young side. I think, getting those people that don't have the time constraints that we have as either young producers trying to have a job and work the farm and have a family, where, it could be, like you said, the retired principal who probably has nothing to do on Tuesday afternoon, kind of thing. He's looking for something to do. And, we have a few of those people in our county that we actually do reach out to every now and then for either advice or kind of just see what, they know what's going on at the coffee shop.
I think that's a great idea also, but on the flip side, from a different perspective, you spend time in the things that are important to you. And again, going back to that Collegiate Farm Bureau, if you can make this organization important to our youth and our young people, we are going to have increased member involvement further down the road. Now, that doesn't solve our problem right now, but you have to think long-term in this. Where agriculture is only going to face more issues, Farm Bureau is only going to have more policies to try to push and face, and we need to start with our youth, whether that is in the high school setting or collegiate level.
That's great, Lydia. Exactly, and it goes right back to what Joe said, and the fact that if you're the one making that impact to that family at the county fair, buying their land when they were the new family and nobody knew them, you're planting the seed. Maybe mom and dad join, maybe they think about Collegiate Farm Bureau when they get into college. Again, it's making those little impacts in our communities, and that's what Farm Bureau is, with grassroots, so make the grassroots impacts so that way it moves up.
So thinking on a county level also with those meaningful impacts, is there something that we can do to make those even more, memorable? Maybe it's writing a handnote letter or card to the student whose sheep you bought, or letting them know, 5 months down the road, hey, we ate that today and it was great. We had a pork chop from the pig that we bought, or whatever it is, trying to stay involved and just make those experiences just a little bit more memorable.
Well, and Lydia, as an ag teacher, making the connection from the county level back over to the FFA chapters. I know we went out and we've said one-on-one with our FFA chapters. We sit on their officer nomination committees, and we're making that connection. We're inviting them to our county fair booth to come and sit and talk with folks. We're partnering on them. We're helping them write grants or give grants too out of our own budget, so that way we can get our brand in there.
One thing, just popped into my head is, we have all these sponsors from agribusiness things. Do we offer them the opportunity to send people to these conferences, to YF&R, to this conference, be like, hey, you sponsored this level amount, you get X amount of tickets, so you can send those people to the conferences so they can get a taste and feel for what it's like to be here. I know they've got all their booths and everything out there, but those people aren't involved in what's actually going on here. And just being that agribusiness voice, just being that new member, getting them involved, and showing that we're not for the 10,000 acre guy, but that's the person we support, is the 10,000 acre guy.
Amy, there's been something on the tip of your tongue I want to hear.
Joe basically just said it. Just finding ways to, invite more people in, whether that be, students at the collegiate level who are more likely to, start off their ag careers in a business, even if they want to eventually get into agriculture production themselves, finding a way to show that, it's not just a, 10,000 acre farmer organization. It's, hey, we've got 11 acres and 30 goats. Like, we're also for you because we're advocating for agriculture at the state level. So we're talking about things like branding policy and fencing policy and, showing that, while you may not be what Farm Bureau would consider a traditional farmer, you're still in agriculture, and that matters to us, and that matters to our policy.
And I really like the idea, Joe, that you had about inviting those sponsors or those bigger agribusinesses that we rely on.
Time has been called. Please prepare your closing statements. I ask that the audience remain silent for 1 minute to aid the competitors in their preparation. Please put down your pencils, and in voluntary order, please stand and give your 1 minute closing statement.
Planting the seed. It's what we do really well in agriculture. And I think Nebraska Farm Bureau, after hearing all this great discussion, has already started to do that. We've opened ourselves up, especially at the county level, into inviting agribusiness on. It'll be interesting to see what happens tomorrow through the delegate meet and what happens in our policy. Do we allow ag business to go all the way up to possibly sitting even on our state board? But it continues to be, we need to nurture that seed. We need to continue to have this growth within our organization so that we continue to have our grassroots effort of supporting rural health, rural life, and our farmers and ranchers. With that, though, we go back to what Joe talked, what Lydia, what Amy all brought up in different factions, is we start at the local level and we expand up. Maybe we take the Excellence in Ag Award and we distill it down to a county-type award that helps to bring those that may not derive all their income from the farm, but can still be very innovative and active within it and help be a great voice for agriculture. So the road has started. We can continue to refine our point, but Nebraska Ag looks in good hands as we expand Nebraska Farm Bureau to ag business.
We are an organization founded on producers, and we cannot forget about those producers. At the same time, times are changing. Your traditional producer is not on the operation 100% of the time, all of the time. All of us have an off-the-farm job. So us as Farm Bureau need to keep up on those times. We need to continue to use that Excellence of Ag Award to help market ourselves. We need to be involved in our collegiate Farm Bureau in our high schools. People spend time in the things that are important to them. So we need to make sure that we are an important organization to those people who are important to us. Thank you for the great discussion today.
What's in it for me? That's always a great question that gets presented to me. And this discussion really helped me, or helped us talk about the things that's in it for everyone, not just the big guys. We talked about small regional events, talking about how we can get family and keep families involved, and how even just bringing an insurance agent to the table really can help bring and grow your members. Taking these things and breaking them down to the smallest parts of our Farm Bureau, and even at your county, local, regional levels, will really help gain and welcome those people into Farm Bureau. Thank you guys for the conversation today.
This question of how to welcome off-farm farmers into Farm Bureau is one that's near and dear to my heart as an off-farm farmer myself. And so I think today's discussion, we had some really great ideas on how to ensure that we can continue to make sure that people who are working non-traditional ag-related jobs, want to be members. And so whether that is that we give them a seat at the table, as Clay said, or we show them in college, as Lydia said, that Farm Bureau is something that gives them something back, or maybe even we go back to our hometowns and, like Joe said, we take it back to the county level, we take it back to the regional level in these less intimidating forms and show them that Farm Bureau can do for them more than they think. And, beyond that, we talked about advocating for things that, even the non-traditional agriculturalists would be in favor of. And I think we came away with some really great ideas that we can begin to implement even tomorrow.
Well, I'm glad I'm not a judge today. Let's show these competitors our appreciation for a job well done. Good job, guys. At this time, I will return this competition to our room chair, David.
Thank you, Desiree, for a well-run competition. Judges for today's competition are Hope Janacek, Adam Peterson, and Andrea Smith. Now I would ask the judges to report with me to the tabulation room upstairs. Please, moderator.